Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bart, and tonight we're going to discuss a very common symptom that I see in my office. It seems that I'm seeing this symptom more and more, and the symptom is vertigo. So vertigo by itself is not actually a condition, it's just a symptom, and I'll dive into here to some degree on a little bit on a deeper level of the causes and really the solutions we can apply to make sure that we are taking care of this and also recognizing. So keep doing the thing, keep sharing it out. Vertigo is unfortunately becoming popular is a tough word to use here, but more and more it's becoming a popular symptom that people are having, and I'll explain to you why that is in just a moment here. So there's really four main causes of it, and two of them I'm not going to discuss in depth tonight, but I will explain those. The first two are this: is something called Meniere's disease, which is a chronic condition, and in this chronic condition, this is where there's usually some hearing loss with this, and this is where you have some of the vertigo symptoms that come and go on and off through the course of a lifetime. A lot of times, Meniere's disease takes a little bit of different protocol and a little bit deeper understanding, and therefore tonight we're not going to discuss it. And quite frankly, that's not where we see the most of the vertigo situations. And then there's another one called neuritis, which is actually an infection to the vestibular nerve that's inside the ear, and that can cause some balance issues as well. So both of those we're going to skip tonight. Not that they don't happen, but the ones that you see most often, and in most situations, most of you that are experienced or have ever had any vertigo, it falls under one of two categories, and that is going to be what we call positional vertigo. And I'll explain that in just a minute, but it is exactly what it sounds like. Certain positions are going to increase or kind of cause the actual vertigo. And I'll explain why that is and also what we can do about it. It's actually pretty easy to fix. And then the other one is a little bit unknown and often missed because it leaves a lot of clues along the way, and it's really a vertigo that's caused by adrenal dysfunction. And we're going to dive into both of those and make sure that by the time we're done here tonight, you can recognize these symptoms for yourself or for a family member or friend. So just kind of pay close attention. And if you've never had vertigo or you're wondering what are the symptoms, what does it mean to have vertigo? So vertigo, for the most part, everyone will describe it a little bit different, yet for the most part, what you're going to see with vertigo is the room feels like it's spinning or whirling around. Now, some people will often describe this as dizziness. So when someone tells me, Doc, I think I have vertigo or I have just a little bit of dizziness, I'll use the conversation that we're about to have and talk about the symptoms, and I'll be kind of probing for this different information. What are they experiencing? How are they experiencing it? To help really determine or kind of diagnose what is the actual cause of this. Again, vertigo is not a condition by itself. It's really just a symptom that we experience. All right. So keep doing the thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading love here. Appreciate you guys keep doing that. All right. So let's talk about the first one, and that's what we call positional vertigo. And really what this is the reason we call it positional is because we can predict it. We move a certain way. Usually it's going to be your head moving, your neck moving in a certain direction. You turn it to the left and boom, all of a sudden the room starts spinning on you. You move it back to the center, give it a second, and it doesn't spin that much on you. We'll often see these symptoms when what I'll hear is that, Doc, I go to roll out of bed and boom, these symptoms happen. Once I sit up straight, I'm okay. The room starts to spin as soon as I roll over. And what'll happen is that to some degree, it'll be predictable because the same movement will elicit the symptoms of the vertigo or the dizziness or the spinning of the room. It's not always exactly that easy, but if you really pay attention, and say you're someone that is experiencing this, you can kind of backstep a little bit like, oh yeah, when I move to the left or I tilt my head or I rotate my head, my neck a certain direction, then I start, that's when it happens more frequently. Often when we have this symptom, it's hard because we're not paying attention to the things we're doing after. We're really just paying attention to the actual symptoms. So in the event that you have any of this dizziness, this room spinning, this whirlwind taking place, see if you can pump the brakes for a little bit. We never want to force our way through it. This is not one, folks, that you want to ever try to muscle out, tough it out. You never want to. Anytime we have anything that inhibits balance, this is not one that you want to, I'm just going to fight through this one. Nope, not this one. And the reason being is there's too much potential for creating harm, meaning that you could fall. And most likely, when you're dizzy, when you have vertigo, when you have these symptoms, when you fall, you're going to lead with your head because your proximity of understanding where you are in space, very difficult, so you rarely will put your hands out in front of you. So again, do not try to fight these symptoms. If you have, some vertigo, do not fight those symptoms. Sit your butt down. Do not move until it's clear and safe for you to go. All right, so positional vertigo really happens because there are crystals in your ear. They're little calcium crystals that are supposed to float back and forth. So if you're not watching this live and you just listen to this, imagine just tipping your head to the left-hand side and you tip your ear to your shoulder. When you tip like that, these crystals should slide up on the left-hand side and essentially keep you balanced. And when you tip to the right, they're going to swing to the other direction. And what happens here, this is what we call the righting reflex. No matter where you put your head, you're always going to be balanced. And the righting reflex means if I tip my head to the left and I twist it, no matter where it is, these little crystals are keeping me in check and they're keeping me balanced. Here's where the challenge happens. Sometimes you tip your head to the left and those crystals aren't moving. They get stuck. That's the problem. If they get stuck, then all of a sudden you can then tip over, or you feel like the room is spinning because these crystals get stuck. And they literally get stuck up against the wall, or they're going down into the canal and they're in places that they shouldn't be. How does this happen? Why does this happen? Often, the precursor to this would be somewhere along the line you had a head cold, or you had some type of an ear infection, or it might have just been a little sinus congestion. Maybe you didn't have any of those, but often that will happen prior. And it might have even passed, but that congestion stayed there and it made it clogged up for these crystals. Now, other things can do it as well. For example, if you're a really high carbohydrate and sugar consumer, it's not uncommon that you get too much wax buildup in your ear and you literally start to congest things and these crystals again get stuck. So here's the thing. The good news is it's very fixable, and it's not super dangerous or anything like that, this type of condition, but you do have to tend to it. So typically, there's a maneuver that's called Epley's maneuver. And what I'm going to recommend here is that it's all over the internet. Just go to the internet. It'll be hard for me to kind of pass this along and instruct how to do this on a podcast. But there's a maneuver called Epley's maneuver. And quite frankly, it's safe. You can do it. Your family members could do it. There's a lot of different versions of it. But really what you're trying to do is you shake that crystal free. More often than not, probably if you're looking to go to a provider, which I do recommend that you do, most chiropractors are very familiar with something called Epley's maneuver, and the double benefit is that most of the time an adjustment will free up those crystals, especially if you get an adjustment like upper cervical. So if you're experiencing some of that vertigo, it's positional. It's a positional vertigo type thing, and you know that you're moving your head in a certain direction. And listen, it might not be there every time you do it, but it might be there on and off through the course of the day, and you experience that vertigo. Go see your provider. Most likely you'll be best off if you go to your chiropractor. That way they can do the Epley's maneuver and get you adjusted. And then the other lifestyle things, make sure you stay super hydrated. You're trying to create flow. Make sure you're doing some nostril breathing to literally start to open up the canals in your head. You want to start to get the air moving and the blood flow going, and back off on the things like carbs and sugar, because just like any other reasons that we want to back off, they can create congestion in the body, and they will back things up and create more of an environment that's conducive to those crystals sticking. So that's number one. That is positional vertigo, and very fixable. It's something called Epley's maneuver and a chiropractic adjustment and clean lifestyle, and almost always you'll be back on your feet without any symptoms within literally a day, 2 days. So that's a nice one, and that's always nice to know that we can fix it up. All right, the other one that I want to discuss here today is a little bit different. This is another type of vertigo, but this one is caused by adrenal dysfunction. This one I want to map out for you just a little bit here, because what happens in this one, this is all caused by sympathetic dominance, and there's different levels to this. So sympathetic dominance is really the state of your central nervous system. And folks, this is kind of an important one, because this can lead us down a path, if left unchecked. This can send you to the ER. This can really have a negative impact on your overall health if we aren't paying attention to the signs and symptoms along the way. So in this particular one, what happens is there's some signs and symptoms, the same thing. The symptom that you're going to experience is that lightheadedness, a little bit of a dizziness, a little bit of the room is spinning on me. But it's also very predictable in the beginning. It's predictable because there's signs and your body's trying to give you some messages along the way. One of the messages is that when you bend over, let's just say that you're doing yoga and you're doing a forward fold. You bend over and you come up. When you come up, all of a sudden, that's when you get lightheaded. That's when the room spins a little bit. That's when you might describe it as getting a little dizzy. But it just happens subtly. Those episodes will be from 10 seconds to about 90 seconds, and that's it. That's usually where this begins. Now, for a lot of people, they're experiencing those things, but they just bypass them. But I will tell you, folks, if you're experiencing that, the writing is on the wall. That is your body's way, really your body's way of telling you that your adrenal glands, your stress modulators, the ones that are helping you adapt to stress in your life, that they're getting behind the game. And the reason that works that way, I'll explain this real quickly for you. So when we bend over and we put our heart below, say we're upright, we have gravity, that's a certain amount of pressure, a certain amount of stress for our heart to pump blood through our body. But when I bend over and I let the flow go the opposite directions, going down to the heart, it's actually easier. It's a quick way to lower your blood pressure by just doing a forward fold, or in yoga we call it a downward dog. So literally just bending over makes it a little bit easier for your heart. But when you go to stand back up, you have a whole sequence of events that takes place in your body. There's a lot of communication that's taking place. And what really does to balance out your blood pressure, so when you bend over, it's easier, but when you stand back up, you need to increase your blood pressure. And what does that for you naturally, we're not thinking about it, thank goodness, right? This is just the innate wisdom of the human body. What's doing that is actually your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands and your kidneys have some involvement, but they are signaling and sending hormones and chemicals to your heart to start to contract harder and faster. So when you stand back up, you can handle the stress gravity. So literally your body adapts, and that's what our adrenal glands help us do. Now, in the event you stand back up and for 5 or 10 seconds or 30 seconds or 90 seconds or whatever it may be, you have that lightheadedness, that lets you know that your adrenal glands are beginning to become dysfunctional. They're tired. That's what it says. They're tired. That what's going on in your life is not being supported through your health actions. And that could be not enough rest, it could not be not enough nutrients, you might have too much stimulants, too much caffeine. We'll get to those in just a moment here. So that symptom right there, positional, where again, similar to the first one, but the first one was all about the head movement. Now we're talking about changing levels. You bend over to downward dog, you do a forward fold, you're down playing with your kids and you come up quick, and all of a sudden you get lightheaded. That's the beginning part of this. That is the early stages of your body trying to send you signals. But then it can keep going. If that's ignored and it just keeps on, keep on, what it eventually can run to, and I will often see this, is an episode that can put you in the ER if you're not careful, because this will be an extreme situation where the vertigo kicks in so much, you start to get blurry vision, your hearing might change, and you lose the proximity of your extremities. And this is meaning that you don't really have a good sense of where you are in space. Your ability to touch things, grab things, to walk, all of the above, you will just not feel right. And it can be very, very scary. How do I know this? It's because I pushed my body more than one time in my life to this extreme. And this is one of the reasons that I do functional nutrition and functional medicine, because no one ever told me these things. No one ever told me there's a path out of this. It was actually something that I was doing that caused these things. And that was too much stress over a long period of time. And listen, it's hard for us to often acknowledge that we have a lot of stressors in our life. But the reality is a lot of us do. And unfortunately, we have normalized so many of these stressors, so we discount the effect that they're having on our bodies. So for example, maybe you're a mom and you've got several kids, maybe you're working, you're doing all of these different things, but the ability for you to recover and the ability for you to consistently trying to keep up with your own health is always put on the back burner. And these are the things, when we talk about central nervous system overload, that's what we're talking here. Easy scenario, you bend over, you notice you're a little bit dizzy, lightheaded, the room's spinning. All right, that's when you start to take action. You don't go any farther than that, and I'll tell you about how we do this in just a moment. If you keep pushing it down the road, eventually your body may essentially rebel back against you and say, no, I can't do this anymore. And the central nervous system essentially goes stuck into overdrive. And when it's there, it's this hyper-stimulus moment, and the entire system is heightened, and it cannot take any more stress. So the simplest things, like bright lights, like these, not neon lights, but fluorescent lighting was often a trigger that I have people come in and say, well, I was in a shopping mall or I was in a gym and they had fluorescent lighting. That seemed to be the trigger. And really what those are the icings on the cake. Those are things that last little stressor was the one that pushed you over the edge. It could be anything at that point. It could be the hard workout that you just did. It could be the lights. It could be you're driving down the road, it's raining out, the windshield wipers are on, and all of a sudden you get this overwhelmed feeling. And it can feel, quite frankly, a little bit like you're having a stress or a panic attack. And a lot of these are, and then they induce this dizziness or this vertigo. And so that's why sometimes it's a little bit difficult, a little bit challenging when someone says, well, what do you think caused it? It's hard for you to recognize because you're thinking of just what you experienced in the moment. And if it is the vertigo, the room is spinning, and the next thing you know, you have blurred vision. And then often when you get to that extreme, it's not uncommon that there's vomit, there's nausea and vomiting that goes with it. And now it really confuses it unless you understand where it all came from. So tonight, I'm doing my best I can on the Health Made Simple show to try to make this, to simplify this and say, if you're experiencing those things, more often than not, it's really adrenal dysfunction. So what do we do about it? One, you immediately got to start to take it down a notch. There's no getting out of this one. You pushed it too far, and now you got to kind of pay back. So you can, and some people choose to medicate up and put drugs into their system to kind of pretend that those symptoms aren't there. And the moment they wear off, these things come back, folks. I've seen this so many times clinically. So what does it really mean? You got to take it down a notch. That means you got to back off the hard workouts. Anything that could be perceived by the body as a stressor, even all the good things that you do for you, that might be awesome. All these good biohacks, it might be cold plunging and sauna. Any of these things that are extreme, that we're just doing too many of them without giving back, without nurturing the body, without nurturing our souls for that matter. We're just saying too wound up in the sympathetic dominance, in this fight or flight situation, because that's ultimately what that is. That extreme case, what I just talked about there, where there's vomiting, where there is the blurred vision, where the room seems like it's spinning and it feels a little bit like a panic attack. That is an extreme state of fight or flight, and the body is rebelling back against you. So we got to chill it out. It's not uncommon that these patients, if they give themselves and afford themselves the time, they'll easily sleep for 12 hours. It's not uncommon they'll sleep for 18, 24 hours straight. Because at this point, the body is literally fatigued. It is worn out. And if you give it that opportunity, it would probably sleep that much to start to try to recover. So we're going to do a couple of things. So lifestyle-wise, you're going to take it down. And the nice thing is if you just take it down for a week or two at a time, and you start to give back to yourself, you get back a little bit rest, you put the phone down. Our eyes are a major contributor to the amount of stress to the central nervous system. So being on our phones on a regular basis, being in fluorescent lighting, being where there's high buzzing lights and high energy and a lot of EMF taking place, not very good for the central nervous system. So whatever you can do to modulate that and take that down, awesome. Anytime you get a situation where you can be in essentially a cold or dark situation, or both of those, cold, dark, and quiet, those immediately will start to help your body. And if you recognize that being in a quiet place, in a darker place, maybe a little bit of colder, and you're staying warm, but it's calmer, it's not a lot of stress on the body, that helps, then that also is indicative of telling you this is due to adrenal dysfunction. And that's kind of nice to know. So it takes a little bit of the stress, because these situations, if you've ever experienced them, be super, super, super stressful. I mean, they're scary, quite frankly, because anything that makes you, the inability to move your body properly in space, inability to probably see that well, or to be dizzy on a regular basis, the room spinning on you, all of those things, we essentially lose control. And when that happens, it can be very frightening, to our psyche and whatnot, which creates even more stress. All right, so let's back this up a little bit and just talk about lifestyle. No doubt, and if this happens to you, the number one thing, you got to shut it down. There's no way around it. This is your body's fight or flight system, which your body will recognize as one of the most important systems in your body, which is your adrenal system. Your adrenals are the glands that produce a hormone called cortisol, which your body uses for fight or flight, and your body believes that those hormones are the most important hormones in the human body because they're the ones that are going to save your life. So if you start to compromise the system, you as a human being become compromised in dealing with any stressor that we experience in life. So one, we got to take it down. Sleep is number one. We heal when we sleep. So giving yourself an opportunity to get a little bit more sleep, even if it means nap, and you might have to do the napping for the next couple months, whatever it takes to be strong. And we have to then start to make an adjustment to our mentality. There's what I call, and we've talked about it here in the Health Made Simple show, there's what I call the knucklehead mentality. Knucklehead syndrome is when we just keep pushing through because we can, not because it's good for us, just because we can. And I get, and there's a lot of bravado that goes with it, and I get a lot of people watching TikTok, videos and whatnot, and just keep pushing, keep driving. To what cost, though? That's the question. If you're pushing and driving and you're replenishing, beautiful. That's awesome. That's the name of the game. But if you're pushing and driving, and you're driving your body and your literally your central nervous system and your physical body, you're draining it out, you will pay for that. So I guess I'm just trying to send the message, because I've been there and that wasn't fun. It took me literally months, if not a year, to really recover from that moment of where my body shut me down. The blurred vision, the dizziness, the vertigo, all of those symptoms all at one time. It took quite some time to really recover from that. So what do? We slow it down, we take it down. Sleep is going to be your most important thing. Clean living. The more inflammation that you have in your body, especially the inflammation that's produced through bringing toxins in their body, there's no way around this. Again, we've talked so much about this on the Health Made Simple show, that in order for you to be good, you have to put good food in the human body. If you put bad things in, your body always recognizes that as stress. In fact, there's some interesting studies out right now of just measuring the amount of stress hormones that are released when you eat sugar, carbohydrates, oatmeal in the morning. It's fascinating to see anything that your body converts to sugar real fast, on how much of impact it has on your stress hormones. So get the diet cleaned up, get the carbs and the sugar, reduce them, get rid of them, get them low or no, whatever you can there. Make sure that you eat clean, real food from God's garden. And then there's some phenomenal herbs and supplements that we can use. I'll list them off here. Hopefully we can put those in the show notes as well. So there's a couple herbs. There's what's called an adrenal tonic. So if someone came into my office with those symptoms, and whether it be really the hint of symptoms where they're bending over and coming up and they're getting a little lightheaded, but it's only lasting for 10, 15 seconds at a time, whether it's that one or it's full blown, the formula is very similar. In the one scenario, well, actually both scenarios, what we're going to do is use an adrenal tonic, which has 4 amazing herbs. Ashwagandha, which everyone knows that ashwagandha is phenomenal at regulating cortisol, especially morning cortisol levels. It's phenomenal for helping testosterone production, and it's one of the absolute best herbs for thyroid function. So we have ashwagandha, echinacea, which is a white blood cell modulator. So your white blood cell system, which is helping your immune system. They don't go up too high, not too low. So we're always going to need a little immune support when our body is broken down. There's also going to be something called rumania in there. Now, rumania is probably not one of the most commonly known herbs, but I will tell you, when it comes to adrenal dysfunction, it may be one of the most valuable herbs that you could possibly use. It will help regulate the gland itself and also help repair if that gland has been beat up and damaged at all. So those 3 are there, along with licorice root, and licorice root is a phenomenal tonic, helps soothing to the human body, and it's an adaptogen herb. So all 4 of those are in one blend called an adrenal tonic. And that tonic, it's a liquid tonic, and I'm not saying that it tastes great, but it doesn't taste that bad. It's doable. You'll consume that about 3 times a day. You do what we call these little half shots. And then you'll also use a couple nutrients to support this. One that you can use is called Drenamin. Drenamin is, think about a multivitamin for your adrenal glands. If you got to this point, either one of the points where you're bending over and coming up and your body is, you're experiencing some vertigo, and or you're getting to that extreme, your glands are deficient in the nutrients that they need to be able to keep up with you. And that's what Drenamin does. Drenamin is it's very specific, designed for feeding your adrenal glands. And that, at bare minimum, is something that we want to do. If you've gotten to the second phase of this, and the second phase is kind of what we'll call the extreme phase, where it shut you down. These symptoms last for a day at a time, 2 days or more. Remember, if you're having those symptoms that long, your body is really trying to tell you that it's near breakdown, and that you are stuck in fight or flight in this prolonged stress that you've had from your workouts, from your relationships, from your job, from life in general, from poor sleep, from just always pushing, from just doing all the things and kind of ignoring our bodies. If you get to that phase, then there's a third supplement that I usually add to that, is something called adrenal desiccated. Adrenal desiccated is a desiccate, just like it sounds, and it helps support the gland because that tissue is most likely beat up. So there's those three things: adrenal tonic, Drenamine, and adrenal desiccated. I will also tell you that most of the times these individuals will benefit from having some magnesium. And we usually take magnesium at night. I particularly use one in our clinic that's very gentle on both on the stomach and on the body, crosses the blood-brain barrier, something called magnesium lactate, and we take 3 tablets at night, or 3 capsules at night. So that's the map here for you. So I just described the 2 most common causes, we'll say, of what most people experience when it comes to vertigo. There are 4. There's Meniere's disease, which is more of a chronic condition. There is the infection that you could have on the vestibular nerve, which we just call it a neuritis there in the actual ear. But the 2 most common ones here, one is what's caused by positional vertigo, is when you tip your head. You end up having those symptoms. If that's what you do, you want to get with someone who knows how to perform the maneuver called Epley's maneuver, and then a chiropractic adjustment. Usually a chiropractor can do both of those. And then if you have the other one where when you bend over, you change levels instead of just moving your head, but you're changing levels. In the event you're experiencing the room spinning, you get the swirling, you get a little bit dizziness when you come up, and it only lasts for a little bit. That tells us you have some adrenal dysfunction. If you've gone to the extreme where your central nervous system has been under the gun for long periods of time, you've been stuck in fight or flight for long periods of time, you might get all the way to the way where your body has in a very abrupt moment where it shuts down. You might have loss of vision. You have a hard time feeling your fingers, your toes, your position in space and in place. And oftentimes people end up in the ER. They're not going to do too much for you there. They might sedate you or something with some kind of medications. But ultimately, if that is your case, that is when you want to go home, take it down, start treating your body better, start treating your life better, start to make an analysis of some things that you're doing in your life, right? And usually the answer is you haven't done enough for you. And I think we're all probably a little bit guilty of it. All right. Well, thanks for being here for another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. Hopefully this finds space in your life where somewhere you're able to either apply it for yourself or keep doing the thing, keep sharing it out, keep spreading love, and of course, continue to take deliberate action. And remember, action is probably the number one medicine of everything. Continue to take deliberate action for your mind, your body, your overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.